Hello and welcome to another segment of Stay the Strife and Refuel the Fire, an exploration of Mars during Mars's retrograde in Aries in 2020. Today I'm going to be looking at the stories and the ideas around the Babylonian god named Nergal. In particular, I'm interested in how Mars, in the way that we often think about it in regards to sect, Mars being the malefic of the night, is really like the guardian of the night, and acts as protector of the moon and Venus. And because of this, we can think about how Mars rules the sympathetic systems, those of fight or flight, but also how Mars is there to really disrupt order, to compel chaos. It subjects the daytime to the powers of the night. We know the dangers of this. We know the dangers of unfettered rage and how it can lead to destruction and sadism that is almost delighting in the suffering of others. And how also it can lead to that impulse to completely destroy or overwhelm something. But I think that if we, in reviewing what Mars does, if we start to only focus on this undefined, powerful heat that can be so dangerous, and we think that we should rid ourselves of that, we are doing a disservice to ourselves and to our world, because we do need people who can learn to marshal these qualities. And I think that as we're coming to the end of this course, we've just made it through Mars's opposition to the Sun. And in doing so, we are past the halfway point of Mars's retrograde cycle. But Mars now has moved past that moment of curtailed passage, so Mars will still make contact with the horizon. And though is going slow and retrograde, now is still a time for us to learn how we remarshal these powers within our own life, because we need them. Some of us may feel more inclined to embody them than others, and I'm not saying that we need to literally embody these powers, but someone has to do it. Someone has to do it, and I think that we'd like it to be done in a way that is part of the world that we live in, part of this cosmos, as Mars itself is part of this cosmos. So I'd like to turn my attention to the Babylonian god Nergal. And, he doesn't seem to be originally Sumerian, but his name is derived from Nergal, which means Lord of the Underworld. And this suggests that this name is a distinct divine personality, but rather not only, or it suggests that it's both a distinct divine personality, but also a generic term for an underworld deity, of which several were worshipped in Mesopotamia. We can think of Ereshkigal, Ninazu, Gira, or Ira, all being Mesopotamian underworld deities. But Nergal as a divine name is known only since the old Akkadian period, and it features almost exclusively in Akkadian inscriptions of this time. And there is a link between this deity, Nergal, and the Sargonic kings and his cult center within Kuthu, as mentioned in Sumerian temple hymns. But what I want us to turn to is this old Babylonian period seems to have assimilated several rival Sumerian chthonic gods, and in the course of that, it comes to be known as what we think of in the second millennium as Nergal. In particular, it's interesting for me to note a number of references to Nergal as an astral deity who finds himself in the underworld against his inclinations. And this may not be the part of the cycle that we're looking at right now, this underworld moment for Mars, but you'll see how it fits in. Nergal is actually the consort of Ereshkigal, who is the goddess of the underworld, and together they rule the underworld. And so he's initially sent to from the astral world by other heavenly gods as an atonement for failing to observe divine laws concern the dealing between heaven and the netherworld. And further, while he's there, he trespasses another taboo of the underworld, because Nergal Mars, it's about bringing chaos to the situation. Nergal's always going to push things further than they're really allowed to go. And so therefore it kind of touches back to some of that trickster energy that I had spoken of before. But he trespasses another taboo of the underworld. That is one of sexual intercourse. He fornicates with Ereshkigal, and in doing so he's doomed to be in the underworld forever as the consort of Ereshkigal in the underworld. Now, what's interesting in doing research for this course, I found an esoteric text from the Kassite period of Mesopotamia. And in it spoke so much to me of this moment of in the northern hemisphere, for those of us that live here, where the sun is beginning to decrease in its amount of light as we share it with our brothers and sisters in the south. But the story goes that Nergal's sojourn in the underworld is associated specifically with these dark winter months. And this is something that we don't often get in our current contemporary astrological significations, that Nergal was also linked to the sun. His another name that we knew Nergal as was Nerd-Nergal, which was the god of light. And it became later associated with the sun and with Mars. So in this descent, where we spend a portion of the year, about 160 days of the year, where the sun's power is decreased and it becomes the darker period, that's Nergal descending into the underworld to rule as the consort of Ereshkigal in the underworld. But then also, as that blazing sun, he descends there and remains. Nergal, this Nerd-Nergal, the god of light, is associated with the planet Mars. And in this capacity, he resides in heaven as well as in the netherworld, and is clothed in frightful splendor, the texts say, reflecting this intermittent and awe-inspiring luminescence of Mars. And something I want to end on is thinking about how, yes, Nergal is the hymns speak to Nergal being a warrior, and also a god of pestilence and disease, but also a god of fertility and vegetation. And this is something that we see within many traditions in the world, is often these underworld deities are linked to the powers that are numinous and so difficult for us to relate to in a positive, influential way, but that their force is actually totally tied to the renewing of the earth. And so I'm struck by this, I'm struck by this in this moment, this period where, for me, I live in the Northern Hemisphere, I live in the UK and Scotland. And we see how at this moment, those of us that live at more extreme northern, southern latitudes, how the sun's power wanes so quickly here. Simultaneously on the other side, it waxes so quickly as we move into spring and into the brighter times, the night lights. But as those of us that move, into the nighttime of year, we need to think about this, because this particular retrograde, we are with Mars as Lord of the Night for most of the winter. And simultaneously, how is this heat, how does it go to the underworld and become the consort of the goddess Ereshkigal of the underworld? So it's something, a story I want to leave you with, and something you may do some more exploring about. But Mars is that guardian of the night, and it's there to protect the moon and Venus. And yes, in its way of doing so, it disrupts order and compels chaos. And I think that we all, my thing that I'm trying to encourage us all to do at this time is to understand where that heat, that indeterminate, undefined heat of Mars burns bright in our life, and how we can use that energy to really bring some information and some balance to our life, because it is part of this cosmos. It is part of the world. So I leave you with that, and there's a bit more to come, and I'd love to see where we go with this.